When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, and welcome back to the Grease Common YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how did the Targaryens lose Robert's Rebellion? How were they overthrown? And what things kind of led to them being overthrown? So before we get into the video, if you guys like to like, subscribe, and comment, please do. It helps the channel grow and reach out to people that might like this content as well. And let's get into the video. So the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to Robert's Rebellion and why the Targaryens lost is that, for one, the Targaryens were not one major Targaryen force. They were very split. And that becomes of Rhaegar's kind of side, the people that liked Rhaegar, and the people that were loyal to the Mad King Aerys. And this kind of created almost a divide in King's Landing, where we see it kind of like in the Dance with Dragons, where I did this kind of analogy when I was talking about Rhaegar's video last week, where we see this idea that the Dance with the Dragons and Robert's Rebellion was very similar in the way the Targaryens were split at the time, and that's the reason a lot of this rebellion was able to come up from. Because if Rhaegar had been one force, if he had been the king at this point, I think the Targaryens would have won this very easily. Now, with that being said, the Mad King also made some very bad decisions, right? Calling for Ned Stark's head and just upsetting people for almost no reason but to, I guess, please himself. Did not help. It definitely lost him a lot of allies. It didn't help, though, because here's the one thing as well. Aerys kind of believed that there was another kind of alliance starting to kind of dethrone the Targaryens. And in that, he was partially right. Because if you look at it, the Starks, the Aarons, the Tullys, and even the Baratheons were all kind of, allying together, right? So we had this major alliance of 4 of the kingdoms. It was definitely threatening, and it was something that was growing all of their power. Now, even with all their power still combined, the Targaryens still should have probably won. If you look at how the normal timeline plays out, where Aerys calls for Ned and Robert's heads, and then they scatter, get their forces, then meet up. If the Targaryens had been more prepared and taken this rebellion more seriously, and say Rhaegar was actually there, not, sitting on his hands at the Tower of Joy, then what could have happened is they could have put down the rebellions much easier, as in, okay, camera focus, webcam. So what I'm trying to say is that if Aerys or Rhaegar, whoever would have been in control, would have just sent the army out and had, gotten the Dornish all together and all of their forces combined, the Tyrells as well in there, and just either went after Robert and just took him out, because again, he had to get to the Stormlands, right? And then his main problem was getting all the Stormlords and the Bannermen to rally to him, right? Because there were even some Stormlords, or Bannermen, I don't know, I keep saying Stormlords, but Bannermen that were against Robert. So if the Targaryens had moved to even help these Bannermen and had been able to assemble quicker, they could have taken out Robert way earlier on. Now, if they had done that, they also would have been able to take out the Tullys as well. Tullys at this point would have been pretty much ally, like they would have had no allies almost at this point besides Jon Arryn and the Vale that possibly could have helped. But the Baratheons by this point could have easily been crushed. The Starks and the North, they would not have been in the fray yet. We see that this takes a good point of the war, a long time of the war, before the Starks actually get all the northern forces down and everybody meets up in the Riverlands, basically. So what I'm saying is, if the Targaryens had been more prepared for the rebellion and taken it more seriously, a lot of things could have been prevented. Another major thing is Rhaegar just basically sitting out the war until the final battle. That's a major one. Another thing we could talk about is Jon Con. He just couldn't find Robert and all that, and if he would have found Robert, the war probably would have ended there. Because Rhaegar, we do see when he comes back, he still has a very good force, and Rhaegar himself is a very good swordsman at this point of the history and all that. And it even is a big showing that even at the end of the war, right, the battle for the Trident, it was a fairly equal battle. The battle only turns south when Robert actually kills Rhaegar. So if Robert had been dead, if Jon Con would have been able to find him, things could have gone a lot differently. And when we talk about certain things, Robert's Rebellion is one of those events where it definitely was only able to succeed because of a lot of good things happening, right? When I talk about certain things like Ned getting beheaded, right, and Cersei kind of winning that whole thing, it's a lot of things had to go right, right? Like, you know, Robert had, or wrong, I guess, for Ned, where Robert had to be, you know, killed and all this stuff, and it had to happen at a certain time right before Ned could tell Robert, and that's the only way that was going to work. It's kind of that way as well in Robert's Rebellion, where a lot of things had to happen for the rebellion for it to actually work, right? You had to stall enough time for all the forces to kind of meet up and be assembled, and the Targaryens just almost didn't react, right? Because Aerys, I didn't take this threat seriously. We know that for a fact. And when he starts to take it seriously is when it's almost too late. And that's when he gets Rhaegar back and they, you know, do their thing at the Trident. But even then, they still had a chance. And the thing is, if the Targaryens kind of looked like they were going to win, or if they had won a couple battles, the Lannisters also probably would have put in, and you would have gotten their support as well. So if you see how badly and poorly managed the war was from the Targaryen side, you start to understand how they lost. And it is kind of interesting to see that, because if one thing had gone differently for the Targaryens, they probably would have won it. But that is my little short video of why the Targaryens ended up losing Robert's Rebellion. A lot of things went wrong for them, and they just were not prepared and or taking the whole thing seriously. So thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed, and let me know what other videos you guys like to see me do, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.
If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.